Nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Carl Jung. In a world that once wounded you, you're now stepping into a version of yourself that can no longer be broken. What if I told you that your past pain was never meant to define you, but to awaken you? In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we explore the transformation that happens when you no longer allow anyone or anything to hurt you again, not because the world changed, but because you did. Let us know in the comments, what's one powerful boundary you've set recently to protect your peace? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another step on your spiritual awakening journey. 1. The illusion of strength and the hidden pain. Many people dream of becoming emotionally untouchable, unshaken by rejection, immune to betrayal, and indifferent to criticism. On the surface, this sounds like strength. But behind that desire often lies a hidden truth, the longing to escape the pain that once broke us. The image of being unbreakable becomes a mask we wear to feel safe, a performance we maintain to protect the wounded parts of ourselves that never fully healed. Yet spiritual wisdom reminds us that when we try to numb pain, we also numb joy. When we suppress what hurts, we suppress what is real, trying to uphold the illusion of strength, pretending everything is fine while you're silently falling apart, only deepens the suffering. It turns the soul into a battlefield where the heart quietly bleeds while the face smiles. Carl Jung saw this clearly. He understood that much of what we call strength is really just fear in disguise. The fear of being seen as weak, the fear of being rejected again, the fear of being vulnerable in a world that often punishes tenderness. But the cost of this illusion is steep. It disconnects us from our inner truth, from our ability to feel deeply and live fully. As long as we try to avoid pain, we remain controlled by it. It lingers beneath the surface, influencing our choices, our relationships, our self-worth. We may think we're protecting ourselves, but in reality, we're keeping ourselves trapped in patterns of emotional numbness and spiritual stagnation. Pain that is denied doesn't disappear. It becomes part of the lens through which we see the world. The more we resist it, the more it persists. This is where the real shift begins, not by pushing pain away, but by facing it with open eyes and an open heart. True strength, then, isn't the absence of pain. It's the ability to stay present with yourself while you're hurting. It's knowing who you are in the middle of the storm. It's choosing to stay connected to your essence, even when everything around you is trying to pull you back into old fears and patterns. This kind of strength doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence. It's quiet. It's grounded. It doesn't shout, but it never breaks. The deepest spiritual wisdom teaches that nothing and nobody will ever truly hurt you again. Not because the world will become kinder, but because you will stop abandoning yourself to please it. You will no longer betray your soul for the sake of appearances. You will no longer sacrifice your truth to earn acceptance. When you stop resisting pain, you become free. When you embrace your humanity with compassion, you become whole. Pain loses its power when you stop running from it, and in that moment, you remember who you've always been. Not untouchable, but unshakable. If you're ready to release the illusion of invincibility and embrace your true strength, the raw, honest, and human comment below. I allow myself to feel and heal. 2. Pain comes from within, not from others. What hurts the most is rarely what others do to you. It's what their actions stir up inside. A harsh comment, a sudden rejection, a betrayal they strike not because they are inherently powerful, but because they awaken something unresolved within you. Carl Jung called this the meeting point between the outer world and the unconscious, the place where life's events become mirrors, reflecting back the wounds you haven't yet healed. The pain doesn't originate in the event. It emerges from the story, the memory, the emotional scar that lives quietly beneath the surface. This is the essence of spiritual wisdom. Pain is a signal, not a sentence. When someone's words shatter your sense of peace, it's not their voice that has power. It's your own inner vulnerability responding. Maybe you were dismissed in a meeting and suddenly felt invisible. That moment taps into a long-buried belief that your presence doesn't matter. Or perhaps someone you love pulls away. And the ache isn't just about them. It's a childhood fear of being abandoned all over again. In this way, the world doesn't injure you. It reveals you. Carl Jung taught that true freedom begins when we recognize this inner dynamic. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming your authorship. Others lose their power the moment you realize that the trigger is not the cause, but the invitation. Every emotional reaction is a doorway. Every sting is a map leading back to a place that longs to be seen and healed. That's not a weakness. That's the birthplace of self-mastery. In modern life, these triggers are constant. A friend's success on social media makes you question your worth. A partner's silence leaves you spiraling in doubt. A stranger's criticism ruins your whole day. But the truth is, none of these moments have authority over you unless you grant it. The moment you understand that the source of pain is internal, you are no longer a victim. You are a seeker of truth. The path of healing, then, is not to harden yourself or escape emotion, but to meet each wave of feeling with compassion and curiosity. You don't need to become untouchable. You need to become aware. When you bring your attention to the wound instead of the weapon, you start to shift. You stop defending and start listening. You stop hiding and begin integrating. And in that space, nobody, not even the harshest critic or the deepest betrayal, can truly harm you. Carl Jung's insight is timeless. What happens inside you determines everything. When you stop being reactive and start being reflective, you reclaim the power you unknowingly gave away. You step into a life where every experience becomes a teacher, where pain no longer controls you, but guides you, where the world may still be chaotic, but your inner life is rooted in peace and presence. This is not about building walls. It's about becoming whole. And when you are whole, nothing and nobody can break you again. Are you ready to reclaim your power from within? If this message speaks to your heart, comment below. I will heal within to show your commitment to inner transformation. 3. The battle is within. The role of the unconscious. As long as your unconscious remains hidden, it quietly governs your life, shaping your choices, emotions, and reactions in ways you can't fully see. And yet, you call it fate. You wonder why pain keeps coming back, why similar wounds resurface, why the same emotional storms return no matter how much you change your surroundings. But the answer is not outside of you. It lives deep within. Pain, anger, and sadness are not random burdens. They are messengers, signals from repressed parts of your psyche calling out to be seen, heard, and finally understood. When you ignore them, they don't disappear. They grow roots and silently dictate the direction of your life, showing up as anxiety, chaos, or cycles you can't seem to escape. Suppressing your truth only feeds the shadows. Every time you silence your grief, swallow your rage, or pretend you're fine when you're not, you plant seeds of inner fragmentation. Those seeds grow into patterns that repeat over and over until you stop and face them. It's not a weakness to feel deeply. What weakens you is avoidance. Because the moment you judge your pain or deny your sadness, you reinforce the lie that parts of you are unworthy of love. That's when the real suffering begins, not because of what others do to you, but because of how much of yourself you feel forced to hide. Healing starts when you stop fighting your own emotions. Spiritual awakening isn't about becoming endlessly calm or universally forgiving. It's about becoming fully conscious. That means turning toward what hurts, what's buried, what was too overwhelming to feel before. Integration is the true medicine. You don't heal by pushing darkness away. You heal by allowing it to come into the light, by gently sitting with your wounds and letting them speak. When you welcome these neglected parts of yourself, something powerful happens. The pain loses its grip, and you reclaim the pieces of your soul that were once forgotten. You realize that no one can hurt you unless there's already a wound inside waiting to be triggered. That's the great liberation. The world may still act as it always has, but you no longer respond with the same inner chaos. Why? Because you are no longer a prisoner of your unconscious. You've met your pain with compassion, your fear with presence, your sorrow with understanding. And when you do this, the war inside ends. You become whole, not by erasing your darkness, but by making it conscious, just as Carl Jung taught. This is the heart of spiritual awakening, not escaping life, but embracing every part of your inner world with truth, love, and unwavering awareness. Have you ever listened to the voice of your unconscious? If so, share your experience in the comments to help others feel less alone. If not, comment, "I'm ready to face it," and let's begin this powerful journey of healing and integration together. 4. Becoming untouchable comes from acceptance, not defense. Real emotional invulnerability is not about building walls or pretending you're unaffected. It's about developing such deep inner clarity that you no longer need to defend yourself. The phrase, "I don't care," has become a mask that many wear. But behind it, there's often a heart that's quietly bleeding. What most people call strength is often just suppression. But true power doesn't come from hiding your pain. It comes from accepting it, from looking it in the eye without flinching, and choosing to integrate it instead of running away. When you suppress your wounds, they don't disappear. They go underground. They show up in defensiveness, in emotional numbness, in the inability to truly connect. That's why so many people appear strong, but are secretly exhausted. They're fighting battles with themselves just to appear okay. But spiritual wisdom teaches that real transformation doesn't begin with pretending you're above the pain. It begins when you stop judging yourself for having it. Your pain, your fear, your shame. These aren't weaknesses. They are portals. Portals to your most authentic self. To integrate your shadow means to sit with what you usually avoid. It means not pushing away your rage or your grief, but asking, What do you need to tell me? The more you do this, the more you begin to realize that emotions are just energy-seeking acknowledgement. And once acknowledged, they lose their power to control you. You stop reacting impulsively. You start responding with clarity. You stop being ruled by past wounds. Instead, you observe them, honor them, and gently disarm them. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop collapsing every time someone triggers you. You become rooted in yourself. Your peace is no longer negotiable. When people insult you, you no longer take it personally. When they abandon you, you no longer lose yourself. You begin to understand that other people's actions are not about your worth. They are reflections of their own wounds. And so you stop internalizing their chaos. You become untouchable, not because you're closed off, but because you're open to your truth, open to your feelings, and open to healing. This is not the cold, sharp strength the world glorifies. It's a quiet, grounded strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything, the kind that radiates from within. When you embody this energy, even your silence becomes powerful. Even your presence becomes protection. You realize that the real battlefield was never outside, it was always within. And once you stop fighting yourself, the outside world loses its grip on your soul. You no longer need to control everything. You no longer need to be liked. You no longer need to win every battle. Because you've already won the one that mattered most. The battle to come home to yourself. That's when nothing and nobody can truly hurt you. Not because you've become hard, but because you've become whole. If this message resonates with your heart, take a moment to declare it. I become untouchable through acceptance, not defense. I embrace my truth and trust the process. Let this be your affirmation today. And if you feel it deeply, comment below and share your light with others on this path. 5. Individuation. Becoming whole, not perfect. Carl Jung taught that individuation is not about striving for perfection, but about becoming whole, integrating every part of your being, especially the ones you've been taught to hide. Most of us think healing means fixing what's broken, improving what's lacking, or becoming someone better. But the truth is, you are not here to become better. You are here to become real, to remember the parts of yourself you disowned, to embrace the full spectrum of your existence, joy and grief, confidence and doubt, beauty and pain, and allow them to coexist without shame. The more you run from pain, the more power it has over you. The moment you try to bury it, suppress it, or mask it with positivity, it begins to rule your life from behind the scenes. People often confuse emotional numbness with strength, but Jung made it clear: repression only deepens suffering. What we refuse to face will continue to control us. And it's not the pain itself that makes us fragile. It's the resistance to feeling it. There's a woman I once knew who wore her achievements like armor. She was successful, admired, and always in control. But beneath it all, she was terrified of being vulnerable. Every failure felt like a collapse. Every criticism cut deeper than it should have. Her strength was performative. She didn't need more achievements. She needed to grieve. She needed to sit with her loneliness without trying to escape it. When she finally did, she stopped trying to be perfect. She started becoming whole. Her transformation didn't come from learning more. It came from unlearning the belief that she had to earn her worth. Carl Jung believed that the shadow, the part of ourselves we hide, is not our enemy. It is our teacher. And until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. That's why the path to inner freedom is not about becoming untouchable or immune to life's pain. It's about becoming intimate with it. The pain does not disappear, but your relationship with it changes. You stop reacting, and you start observing. You stop identifying with your wounds and start recognizing them as part of your human story, not the whole of it. You will find real strength the day you stop trying to appear strong and start being honest. The day you hold your sadness without rushing to fix it. The day you look into the mirror, see every contradiction, and say, I still belong. You don't need to fight your darkness to be free. You need to include it. That's what wholeness is. And when you finally become whole, when you accept the light and the shadow, the ego and the soul, nothing and nobody can hurt you in the same way again. Because your safety no longer depends on the outside world. It comes from the truth within you. Stay connected with our spiritual wisdom community by subscribing to the channel. Here, we explore the journey of becoming whole, not perfect, through self-awareness, healing, and truth. Remember, your contradictions aren't flaws. They're keys to your freedom. You are not broken. You are becoming. Let's walk this path together. 6. Suffering is the beginning of transformation. Suffering is not the enemy. It's a sacred signal, a whisper from the soul that something within you needs to be seen, felt, and healed. Depression is not a flaw in your character. Anxiety is not a defect in your design. And apathy is not laziness. These are the cries of forgotten emotions, the echoes of pain you've pushed aside for far too long. Carl Jung once said that pain is a messenger. So instead of silencing it, avoiding it, or masking it with distractions, you are invited to listen. Because the moment you begin to listen, you begin to awaken. Spiritual awakening doesn't begin with clarity. It often starts with confusion. When you can no longer fake your way through life, when your old masks no longer fit, and when joy seems like a distant memory, this is not the end. It's the threshold. You're not breaking down. You're breaking open. The darkness you feel isn't punishment. It's preparation. The emptiness is not failure. It's a sacred space being cleared for the truth. And the truth is this: you don't need fixing. You need to be met with compassion, especially in your most fragile places. When you stop resisting your pain, something shifts. The energy you once spent running, hiding, or numbing is now available for healing, for integration, for transformation. Jung reminds us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That means the stories you keep reliving, the same heartbreak, the same self-doubt, the same emotional triggers, are not curses. They're invitations. They're the soul's way of guiding you back to yourself over and over again until you finally choose to come home. This process isn't comfortable, but it is sacred. You will grieve things you thought you got over. You will feel emotions you never had words for. You will face the version of you that you abandoned just to survive. But in doing so, you will reclaim your wholeness. You'll see that your wounds didn't make you weak. They made you wise. You'll realize that your sensitivity is not a burden. It's a bridge to the divine. The world may teach you to be untouchable, to stay strong, to smile through the storm. But true strength is not the absence of pain. It's the presence of courage. The courage to sit with yourself. The courage to stop pretending. The courage to feel everything fully, honestly, and without shame. Because once you allow yourself to feel, you stop being a victim of your pain and become a vessel of your power. This is the essence of spiritual wisdom. It's not about escaping suffering, but learning from it. It's not about bypassing your darkness, but walking through it with light. You don't transcend pain by ignoring it. You transcend it by understanding it, by honoring it, and by allowing it to reveal the parts of you that are still alive, still longing, still holy. Spiritual awakening is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been, beneath the layers of protection. It's about returning to the self that trusts its own voice, feels its own truth, and knows its own worth, not because it was taught, but because it was remembered through the fire. 7. True strength is born in the ruins of the ego. True strength is born in the ruins of the ego, where everything you once relied on, your titles, your image, your old stories, no longer hold. Growth does not begin with gaining something new. It begins with losing what is false. You start to outgrow the roles you once clung to, the beliefs you inherited to survive, and the masks you wore to be loved. The more deeply you evolve, the more you realize that these masks kept you safe, but they also kept you small. Letting go is painful, but it is also necessary. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, not becoming perfect, but becoming whole. When life tears down what you've built, you come face to face with yourself. Not the version of you who performs, pleases, or pretends, but the one who's been quietly waiting underneath all the noise. That collapse, the heartbreak, the loss, the moment when everything stops making sense is not a mistake. It's a sacred invitation. What feels like the end is often the soul's way of calling you back to truth. The ego fears this unraveling because it thrives on identity and control. But the soul sees freedom in the fall. Beneath every breakdown is the opportunity to break through. Pain, though uncomfortable, is the most honest mirror you'll ever look into. It doesn't lie. It exposes the illusions you've mistaken for truth. It shows you what's wounded, what's been abandoned inside you, and what is finally ready to be seen. Instead of pushing it away or numbing it down, you begin to sit with it, breathe into it, and listen. You learn that suffering is not a punishment from life, but a doorway to awareness. This is spiritual wisdom. Pain cleanses the spirit of deception and softens the walls built by fear. Every wound becomes a message. Every scar, a sign that something has been transformed. And this is the sacred crossing from the ego's frantic need to fix and control to the soul's quiet power of presence. When you stop trying to prove yourself and start feeling yourself, everything shifts. You are no longer desperate to be untouched by life. Instead, you become open, grounded, deeply connected. Your power is no longer reactive, it's receptive. You don't resist the moment, you become the moment. That is what makes you untouchable, not because you feel no pain, but because you are no longer owned by it. This is the essence of spiritual awakening. The ego breaks so the soul can breathe. Nothing outside you can truly harm you once you return to who you really are. Not because you are armored, but because you are aligned. When you stop clinging to who you were, you finally make room for who you are meant to be. And in that space, in that silence, you find a strength the ego could never touch. 8. Few will walk this path, but it's the only real freedom. Most people will never choose this path, not because it is hidden, but because it demands depth over comfort, truth over convenience. Carl Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole by facing the parts of yourself you've been taught to ignore, reject, or fear. It is not a journey of becoming better. It is the courageous unraveling of who you thought you had to be, so that your true self can emerge not as a performance, but as your natural state. This path strips away illusions. You no longer seek approval or wear emotional masks for protection. The idea that emotional armor is a shield falls apart. True emotional strength is not about building walls. It is about integration. You do not harden. You soften into your center. You stop reacting. You start responding. Life no longer pulls you from the outside because something unshakable has taken root within. The noise of the world fades, not because it disappears, but because it loses power over your peace. Carl Jung understood that the deepest suffering comes from living a life that betrays your essence. Many people feel exhausted, not because they are weak, but because they are disconnected. They live in constant performance, smiling on the outside, bleeding silently within. That's the tragedy of our time, mistaking connection for meaning, applause for self-worth. But when you walk the path of individuation, you begin to dismantle the lies. You stop asking, "Who do they want me to be?" and start asking, "Who am I when no one's watching?" A woman once described reaching success by society's standards of wealth, recognition, stability, yet feeling hollow at the height of her accomplishments. Her soul had gone quiet, so she walked away, not to escape, but to rediscover. She sat with her wounds. She listened to the inner child she had silenced. She faced the shadow she had spent years avoiding. And in doing so, she didn't become someone new. She remembered someone ancient within herself. That is spiritual wisdom. That is healing. The more you walk this path, the less you explain yourself. You don't need to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't perform strength. You radiate peace. You don't suppress your wounds. You integrate them. You don't fear rejection because you are no longer seeking belonging outside yourself. When you are whole, even your silence speaks louder than someone else's performance. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That choice is yours, every single day. Not to be untouchable in the way the world defines it, but to be whole in the way the soul craves. The more you embody your inner truth, the more untouchable you become, not because nothing hurts, but because nothing breaks you. You are no longer held hostage by the fear of loss, rejection, or judgment, because you've reclaimed the very parts of you that were once used to control you. Few will walk this path, but those who do will discover a freedom that can't be taken, a peace that doesn't need permission, and a strength that isn't reactive, it simply is. That is the quiet power of becoming whole. That is the spiritual wisdom Carl Jung devoted his life to sharing. 9. Consciousness is the final shield. External suffering is endless when you remain unconscious of your inner wounds. You can change your job, your partner, your city, but if the same emotions follow you everywhere, the pain will return in new forms. What truly hurts isn't the event itself, but the story you tell yourself about it, the way old trauma colors present experience. Carl Jung once said, What you resist persists. And it's true. The emotions you suppress don't disappear. They wait. They hide behind your smiles, behind your ambition, behind your silence, until one day, something small breaks you, and you don't even know why. Awakening is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice, a quiet revolution within. Each day, you are faced with moments that invite you to choose awareness over reaction, presence over avoidance. Most people run from their pain by blaming others. But healing begins the moment you stop pointing outward and begin to ask, why did this hurt me so deeply? That question doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. When you stop pretending and start listening, you no longer need to defend yourself against life. You become someone who can feel without drowning. Immunity is not the absence of pain. It's the clarity to see pain for what it is, a signal, not a threat. You don't have to become hard to protect yourself. In fact, the harder you become, the more fragile you feel. Real strength is soft. It's rooted. It says, I can feel this and still stay present. That is what makes you untouchable, not because you don't feel, but because your feelings no longer control you. When you integrate what you once denied, grief, fear, anger, you stop living in reaction. You start living in truth. Spiritual awakening is this exact moment of honesty, when you choose to face what's inside, not escape it. And in doing so, you finally understand nothing, and nobody ever really hurt you. They only revealed what was already wounded. This isn't to blame. It's liberation. You're not a victim of the world. You're the one holding the key. So if there is something in you that is ready to feel without fear, to transform without pretending, comment, I choose awareness. That decision, made over and over, is the path out of suffering. Not perfection, not numbness, but awareness. And from that awareness, a new life begins, where you are no longer dependent on the world, but guided by the truth from within. And so, remember this truth. When you reclaim your power and rise above fear, nothing and nobody will ever truly hurt you again. The wisdom of Jung teaches us that inner strength is not found in controlling the outer world, but in mastering your inner world. If this message spoke to your heart, I invite you to like this video, share it with others who may need these words, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos, filled with insights to guide your spiritual awakening and personal transformation. The 5 sacred truths spiritually awake souls must never reveal. Jung once said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. When you awaken spiritually, you begin to see truths that others cannot. Truths so sacred that revealing them can sometimes dim their light. In today's video, we'll uncover the 5 spiritual revelations that awakened souls must guard closely, not out of secrecy, but out of wisdom and energetic protection. As you listen, reflect on your own journey. Have you ever felt the urge to share a deep truth that others weren't ready to hear? Comment below and share your experience. And if you feel aligned with this message, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our Spiritual Wisdom community to keep growing in light and understanding. 1. Never share your direct experience of awakening. The direct experience of awakening exists beyond the reach of language, beyond any attempt to explain or define it. Trying to describe it is like pouring the ocean into a teacup no matter how sincere the effort, the container of words will always be too small for something that vast. Those who haven't yet tasted that stillness will often misunderstand. They might see your words as strange, exaggerated, or even arrogant because awakening cannot be understood from the outside. It is not an idea or a philosophy. It is the dissolving of everything you thought you were. In the realm of spirituality, this realization cannot be transferred through speech, only through presence. It must be lived, not told. True spiritual awakening brings the end of separation, and with that, the need to convince or boast disappears. To talk about awakening too much is to fall back into the illusion that there is something to prove, someone to persuade, or something to achieve. The awakened soul recognizes that sharing such experiences too openly can create confusion, not clarity. What was once sacred becomes distorted when filtered through the ego's desire to be understood. Like a finger pointing to the moon, words can only guide others toward the truth, but can never replace the direct seeing itself. The moon remains what it is, untouched by explanation, radiant in silence. When your consciousness expands, your presence becomes your message. You no longer need to speak of enlightenment because your energy, your peace, and your quiet understanding radiate it naturally. This is the invisible transmission of spirituality, the kind of wisdom that flows without words. Others may sense a calmness in you, a depth they can't quite describe, but that feeling itself is the lesson. Spiritual awakening teaches humility. It dissolves the impulse to declare, "I have awakened," because the one who could claim it no longer exists. The more deeply you awaken, the quieter you become, not because you hide the truth, but because you honor its sacredness. To share the experience of awakening too soon is to hand a mirror to someone who still believes they are the reflection. They will only see their own projections. That is why every mystic and sage has spoken in metaphors, not instructions. They knew that truth must be discovered within, not borrowed from another. So the awakened walk gently through the world, embodying what cannot be spoken, carrying the stillness of the divine wherever they go. The awakened do not teach through speech, they teach through presence. Their silence becomes the highest form of communication, a living proof that spirituality is not something to explain, but something to be. Did this truth resonate with you? If it did, comment "awake" below to show that you understand the sacred value of keeping your awakening experience private. 2. Never share the specific practices that worked for you. Your spiritual path is a deeply personal unfolding, shaped by the rhythm of your soul, your temperament, and the unique circumstances of your life. What awakens one person may mislead another, and what liberates one soul may imprison someone else. That is why you must never share the specific practices that worked for you as if they were universal keys to enlightenment. True spirituality is not a formula to be copied, but a revelation to be experienced. When you reveal every detail of your methods, even with good intentions, you risk turning something sacred and alive into another ego-driven pursuit. As Carl Jung wisely said, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. The journey of spiritual development must unfold in its own way, at its own pace, and in its own time for each individual soul. The moment you begin to wake up, you realize that spirituality has never been about doing more, achieving more, or collecting more knowledge. It is about seeing, what has always been present. Awakening does not happen through endless techniques or strict disciplines. It happens when the veil of illusion falls and you perceive life as it truly is. When you share your exact practices, others may begin to imitate your steps, believing that your path is the map to their freedom. But in doing so, they become trapped in the very illusion they seek to escape, the illusion that awakening can be earned or replicated. True realization happens in stillness, in the sacred pause where you surrender your need to control the process and simply allow awareness to reveal itself. The most awakened souls often grow quieter as their understanding deepens. They no longer preach or insist. Instead, they embody the wisdom they've discovered. They know that certain truths lose their power when spoken, and that some insights can only be understood through direct experience. If you tell someone exactly how you became free, you may unintentionally burden them with another belief that their liberation lies in mimicking your steps. Yet every soul must pass through its own night of transformation before meeting the light within. The path that guided you, whether meditation, solitude, loss, or surrender, was crafted specifically for your evolution. Their path may look entirely different, and that difference is not a mistake, but divine precision. Guard the sacredness of your practices not out of secrecy, but out of reverence. What helped you awaken was a conversation between your soul and the infinite, a private dialogue that cannot be translated into another language. When you share too much, you risk turning your awakening into another concept for others to chase. Instead, live as the example. Let your presence speak what words cannot express. Spirituality is not meant to be taught through rigid instruction, but through embodied truth. Like art, you can describe the colors of your journey, but no one else can paint with your exact brush. The essence of spirituality lies in realization, not imitation. Protect what is sacred. Share the light, but not the ladder you climbed. Inspire others to find their own way back to themselves. For the highest form of teaching is silent radiance, where your being itself becomes the message, and your life becomes the living proof that awakening is not found in methods, but in awareness. Comment below. I honor my sacred path. If you understand that what works for your soul is uniquely yours. Protect your spiritual growth by keeping your deepest practices private, because true transformation doesn't need validation, only devotion. 3. Never share your insights about other people. When you become spiritually awake, your vision deepens, and you begin to perceive the unseen architecture of people's inner worlds, their illusions, fears, and ego patterns that shape how they live and react. You can see through pretenses, masks, and false identities, and this new awareness feels like a light shining through the fog of human unconsciousness. Yet one of the greatest lessons of spiritual wisdom, as Carl Jung often emphasized, is knowing that not every truth must be spoken. You may see someone's wound clearly, but revealing it before they are ready is like tearing open a cocoon before the butterfly has developed its wings. You do not help the creature evolve. You destroy the sacred process of transformation. Spiritual growth cannot be forced. It unfolds naturally through divine timing. Everyone awakens in their own season, and your role is not to accelerate that process through interference, but to honor it through compassion. The spiritually mature understand that insight is powerful energy, and when directed without wisdom, it can wound instead of heal. Speaking about someone's illusions or ego structure before they have developed the strength to face them will only trigger defense, denial, or pain. True guidance does not expose, it holds space. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege must be discovered, not handed over. Therefore, your silence becomes an act of respect, a form of love that trusts the soul's timing more than your need to be understood. You must learn to see without judgment, to feel without trying to fix, and to love without trying to control. Because to awaken spiritually is to realize that each person is their own alchemist, turning their pain into awareness when the moment is right. Instead of forcing realization through words, let your energy do the teaching. The way you live, the calm in your presence, the integrity in your choices speak louder than any explanation could. Those who are meant to awaken around you will sense it. They will feel the silent vibration of truth and be inspired to look within. This is how spiritual wisdom expresses itself, not in preaching or correction, but in presence. Lao Tzu once said, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." The awakened soul understands this paradox deeply. Silence is not ignorance, it is mastery. To hold truth gently, to guard revelation until the listener is ready, is to act in alignment with universal law. So when you see someone lost in illusion, resist the urge to tear away their veil. Trust that their path, no matter how chaotic or confusing, is perfectly designed to lead them back to themselves. Offer compassion instead of commentary, patience instead of pressure. When the time comes, the universe will awaken them in ways no human word ever could. Until then, be the mirror, not the messenger, the one whose quiet light helps others find their reflection. In that silence, you embody the deepest teaching of Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom. Transformation is never given, it is realized. If this message speaks to your spirit, repeat these words with intention. I honor divine truth and respect the sacred silence of others. I choose wisdom over judgment. Let this affirmation remind you that true spiritual wisdom is quiet, compassionate, and discerning. True spiritual awakening isn't about collecting secrets. It's about learning discernment. Some truths are meant to be lived, not spoken. The awakened soul understands that silence can be the highest form of wisdom, for not everything sacred belongs in the hands of the unready. If this message resonates with you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming explorations into the depths of consciousness and the soul's journey.